First off, I'm just going to straight up say, I'm sorry that I sound like I'm dying at all times. I've not been very well, but I wanted to make sure I could get a video out, so please forgive me for that. Analog horror is at its strongest when it uses the format to create mystery and dread. Not just scary images, at its weakest it becomes a collection of cliches that mistake obscurity for depth. Analog horror has always been one of horror's most divisive subgenres. There always appears to be something for everyone from brutal murders to strange and unexplainable life forms. But it often suffers from generic tropes like text explaining everything, or it being used as a substitute for voice acting. Or another is what I call the spooky face effect. Once genuinely able to give an uncanny feeling of unease, it's now one of the most overused visual cliches because it can be used as a quick jump scare, the same as randomly jumping from scenario to scenario with no explanation. What seems to make good or bad analog horror will always be up to each individual's perspective, and today I want to focus on one that seems to be quite divisive. Whereas Gretel seems to have extremely good reputation, or my previously mentioned The Painter seems to be very hated, which by the way was my most viewed video since I did gaming ages ago, so thank you for that. The subject of Foxymations Fairytale analog horror seems to be somewhere in between, and has been both torn apart and replicated dozens of times. And while not the first to turn this into horror, it's probably one of the most recognisable. Maybe not everyone agrees, but something I view as quite important is understanding the source material of what I'm analysing. So I went on Vinted and got this for a few pounds. It's the Grimm Brothers Fairytale stories, the leather-bound version. And what this is a collection of stories from the Grimm brothers who went across Germany and other parts of Europe collecting folklore to put in this book. An almost early form of media preservation, which is more important now than ever. Now, some of these stories may have been given a bit of flair to add to them, but the main concept is always there. And Foxymation did quite a good job translating these into an analog horror, and I want to go through the animations and link them back to this and see where we go from there. I do recommend you pick this book up yourself to have a read, and that you watch Foxymation's story of it first, just to get a general grasp. So without further ado, let's get into the original of it. So through this video I will cut between the video and bits in the original Grimm story with analysis, so it's not as a retelling of Foxymation's video. While the most recent animation made, this is set before all of the other ones, so I've chosen to talk about it first. To sum up the original story before we get to Foxymation's version of the wolf and the 7 little goats, a mother goat goes out and asks her 7 children to not open the door as it will be the big bad wolf, and tells her how to spot him. The wolf is eventually let in and eats 6 of the children. The mother comes home and frees the children from the wolf's stomach and kills it by filling its stomach with heavy stones. Much like in the original story, the mother goes out to get food for her children and tells them to be careful about the wolf telling them how to spot him, telling in the book. So the line the mother says is, "Dear children, I am going out into the wood, and while I am gone, be on your guard against the wolf, for if he were once to get inside, he would eat you up, skin, bones and all. The wretch often disguises himself, but he may always be known by his hoarse voice and black paws." Whereas here she says,
"You won't have any problems recognizing him. He has a gruff voice, haunting eyes, clawed hands. You will know it will not be me."
After finding apples for her children, she encounters the wolf, acting friendly and asking simple questions like, what is she doing in the forest at this time? The mother gently pleads to just go home, as we see the wolf get more intense but subtle with threats, and she runs off, whereas in the Grimm tale, he goes straight to her home. The wolf's face changes to a more distorted look we will recognise throughout the series. Despite being basic looking, it's quite creepy watching it. Borderline playing with his food as the goat hides behind a tree, the wolf finds and kills her, and like a lot of analog horrors, good and bad, the sound effects can be genuinely unsettling. We see her in a sad limbo state beg for her children's lives. The next few scenes aren't anything special, just the children goats discussing what's happened to their mother, some worried and some remaining calm that she will return. We've all had that fear as kids where our parents were out later than usual, whether it was shopping or with people. One of the goats says he's going to look for his mother, with others warning him not to, and then we cut to the world outside, with the wolf trying to coax the children to come out, and after they refuse, he breaks in through the window before smashing the light bulb. Window breaking is going to be quite a common trope in this series. In the original fairy tale, the wolf succeeds in getting inside the house because he manipulates appearances, He softens his voice and disguises his black paws with flour to convince the young goats that he is their mother. Foxymations expands this simple act of deception into something much more disturbing, showing the wolf as some ruthless force of nature. We see an overhead shot that reminds me for some reason of the Foxy minigame from Five Nights at Freddy's 2, with the way it's set out, and it shows the goats going to hide, but sadly 3 are killed in very quick succession. Once again, the sounds being unsettling in a strange way. The almost man-like figure in this clip will be revealed later in the series, but he is just as important as the wolf. With 4 goats dead, we cut to 3 hiding in the closet after an ominous message about losing souls. Finding a camera, the 2 goats think they can escape and film all this to show local authorities, which watching this series you realise it wouldn't work. Another goat is dead in a matter of seconds. One of the remaining goats manages to escape, and we see this point of view running that looks great and comes up a lot in this series, but sadly there is no escape, and finding his dead mother and some tormenting from the wolf showing his 6 brother's head, final little goat is dead as well. Swapping scenes to this universe's Hansel and Gretel after they prepare to link back up in later episodes. Perhaps the most effective aspect of the episode is how it twists a familiar childhood story. Most viewers already know the basic plot of the wolf and the 7 little goats, so the suspense doesn't come from wondering what will happen. It comes from wondering how Foxymations will reinterpret it. By taking a story that many remember as a harmless bedtime tale and revealing its darker implications, the episode captures exactly what good analog horror does best, making the familiar feel deeply unsettling. Little Red Cap was the original translation from the Brothers Grimm story. The Grimm title specifically refers to the small red velvet cap or bonnet, whichever you prefer, that the girl wears, and she fell in love with after her grandmother gifted it to her. Rather than a riding hood, the English title Little Red Riding Hood became the standard through later translations and child story adaptations. Ironically, this analog horror version is extremely similar to the Grimm tale, with the mother telling Little Red Cap to go and take something to her grandmother, except in the Grimm story it's cakes and a flask of wine instead of candy. Also, the book version takes place in the day and the analog takes place at night. In the Grimm story, Little Red Cap is friendly and open with the wolf where she is going, and here after finding dead animals, she is hesitant and only speaks to the wolf after pressure and manipulation. According to the villains wiki on the Big Bad Wolf, he was originally voiced by Foxy himself, but was swapped to YouTuber _Lighthouse_, also known as Crystal, after people struggled to understand the original voice. Also, just want to add that the old school gaming display box dialogue is so nostalgic. In the book, the wolf rushes ahead to get to the grandmother's house, and he does as well in this animation, but the animation doesn't contain the iconic "What big teeth you have, grandma" line. Both versions feature him tricking the grandmother, but in the Grimm's tales she is later alive and free, similar to the goats in the original story that I mentioned. Previously mentioned Fairytale, but here we see some of the scary face issues previously mentioned before. Granny is brutalized and tries to scream a message to protect her granddaughter, but to no avail. The next part has Red Riding Hood worried, so she rushes to Granny's while being stalked by the wolf with more point of view shots and uncanny imagery. The text to replace words issue is also there, but this scene does involve a response of somewhat panic. It's already too late though. Granny is dead, and in quick succession so is Red Riding Hood, as she tries to send a message to her mother that she can't hide. We see the wolf peeking through the window and the episode ends. The final episode of this series has alternate endings. While not canon, they are interesting for this episode when the wolf shows up. A character we learn about later shoots and burns the wolf, but all of that will make sense at the end of the series, but this was worth mentioning. One of the episode's greatest strengths is how it respects the source material while expanding on it. The original Brothers Grimm tale is ultimately about deception and misplaced trust. Foxymations keeps those themes intact but reframes them through analog horror. Instead of relying on a single disguise, the wolf becomes an entity that understands human behaviour. He doesn't overpower his victims with brute force alone. He studies them, manipulates them, and patiently waits for them to make the wrong decision. That makes him feel less like an animal and more like an intelligent predator with an almost supernatural understanding of his prey. The first episode introduces the wolf as the series' central threat. Episode 2, Where Have You Been, begins to flesh out both the mythology and the tone of Foxymations' universe, based on one of the most recognisable stories ever told. Right from the opening, the episode creates an overwhelming sense of paranoia and hopelessness, showing our characters from the last episode horribly mutilated. Unlike traditional adaptations where the danger is clearly defined, this gives us only a brief idea of what the wolf is capable of. Next up we meet Hansel, who in this depiction seems to have a vision telling him to kill the wolf. It's important to note that in this version of the tale he is a hunter, and not just a helpless child like in the original tales that were told to people. In the original story, Hansel and Gretel, originally known as Gretel, they are two children abandoned by their parents in the woods to fend for themselves and starve to death. It's unknown if that happened in this universe, but regardless, the siblings survived and are living together. Hansel walks through the woods with the goal of killing the wolf when he comes across a fox that gives us some more lore, getting us closer to answers.
He's not just a wolf, you need to kill him, he has our souls. Save me please. Behind you.
Trying to be logical, Hansel presumes he is hallucinating because of course animals don't talk. Hansel comes across the mother's house finding a dead body in an almost sarcastic way, claiming he knows where the bad smell is coming from. A message left by her shows she tried to hide but gave up hope, knowing whoever found the note would die next. Joke/meme within the community about Hansel's AK-47, and we see it here while the wolf tries to do his usual window scare tactic. He is shot and lets out a painful groan, so perhaps he can be damaged in some way and isn't indestructible force of nature we once thought. Using one of the analog horror tropes of static to switch scenes, the wolf is behind Hansel and we presume it will be an instant death like everyone else, but we see him mauled and try to fight back, shooting the wolf more until we see his distorted face. Before the wolf informs the audience bullets are not enough to stop it, miraculously Hansel escapes, finding Granny's house, slowly accepting that he may not be able to escape. Inside, the false sense of security returns when another window is broken. One last attempt to hide leads to Hansel's death, with the souls of the deceased berating him for not being able to save them. By the end of the episode, it's clear that Little Red Riding Hood, Where Have You Been, is about establishing the wolf as something far greater than the villain of a single fairy tale. Every encounter teaches us something new. He can stalk with inhuman levels of power, and he can survive injuries that should kill him. And perhaps most terrifyingly, he also seems to be one step ahead of his victims. Even Hansel, a trained hunter armed with a rifle, couldn't stop him. It's also one of the first times the series begins weaving the Brothers Grimm stories together into a single collected narrative. In the original tales, Hansel and Gretel, Little Red Riding Hood, and the Wolf and the Seven Little Goats are completely separate stories, with no connection beyond sharing similar themes. Foxymation reimagines them as different encounters with the very same evil, making it feel less like we're watching individual fairy tales and more like we're uncovering a connected universe just minimal pinpoints away from each other. The Three Little Pigs episode starts out like a video game, which I can't help but think was inspired by games like Snow White and the Seven Clever Boys, one of the worst games in history. I mean, look at that cover. This was meant to be an educational game targeted at young children. It functions as an interactive storybook that features a variety of mini-games, but it's just seen as a failure that is now way too expensive. A robotic voice often used in analog horror goes over the basic story we know for the Three Little Pigs.
Upon a time, 3 little pigs left their mother's house to build their own homes. The first pig built his house out of straw, because it was quick and easy. The second pig built his house out of sticks, which took a little more effort. The third pig worked hard to build a sturdy house out of bricks.
We're then building each house out of stronger materials before the wolf is introduced, and we go to this point and click game type screen where the player helps the pig pick straw to build his house. In the original story it is built out of straw because the first pig is lazy. It turns to night and instead of the famous "I'll huff and I'll puff and I'll blow your house down" line, he says this.
Let me in, little pig. I won't destroy your house. We can be friends. Sure.
The wolf breaks down the door this time instead of a window, and in a painful sound, even creepier than anything we've heard before, first pig is killed by being clawed apart by the wolf. We cut back to this basic animation seen before and starts telling the original Three Little Pigs tale about how the first pig ran to his brother's house while interconnecting with visuals of a dead pig. While the narrator is trying to tell the original story, the wolf keeps corrupting it. Moving on, we're introduced to the second pig in the same point and click style. The pig asks us to pick what material he will use again, and the previous material used becomes corrupted by an image of a mutilated Hansel. The player clicks the stick option and we cut to night again. The wolf tries to trick the pig to letting him in by using his dead brother's head to seem like he is alive before the lights cut out, leading to this scene. Which may represent the fear the second pig goes through, knowing he's going to die just like so many others. We see the second pig hanged, whether this time by the wolf or by himself isn't known. The fact the animals aren't eaten just shows us that this wolf isn't hunting for food or for his own survival. He's just sadistic and messed up murderer, simply doing it for the adrenaline rush and excitement of it. The narrator tries to continue the original story but is corrupted once again.
Puffed, and blew that house down too. The two pigs ran to their brother's brick house. The wolf tried to blow it down.
When we cut to the third pig, instead of the same generic scene as the other two pigs, we get this message. This shows us maybe there is a way to save everyone's soul, and perhaps a way to actually kill the wolf, something the audience has never expected until now. The third pig asks what material, and the already used materials are broken by images of his murdered brothers, and the player picks bricks not prepared for what's ahead. We suddenly realise what's going to happen when the final pig finds gasoline and a lighter. The pig tempts the wolf to enter his house, knowing what must be done to put his brothers finally at peace, and he burns him to death. It's important to mention that in the original Three Little Pigs, all three pigs survive, and they boil the wolf alive in a pot as he comes down the chimney as they put a lid on it. The pot which was probably the inspiration for the idea of burning him. It finally happens, the wolf is dead, and we see the same little boy from the 7 Goats episode, and he gives us this message. Finally showing the true villain, the witch, and he tells Gretel she needs to kill her while he burns in hell for his sadistic actions. It turns out everyone but Hansel can rest. There is a part in the alternate ending episode where the wolf catches the lighter and kills the pig. Once again, this is just an alternative ending, so it's not canon. What's really interesting is what this ending means for the series as a whole. Up until now, the wolf has felt unstoppable, an ancient force that nobody could fight back against. This is the first time we're shown that he isn't invincible and he can die. The question is whether killing him was enough. Instead of a feeling of relief at the end, Foxymations immediately shifts our attention to an even bigger threat. The wolf who we've spent the last 3 episodes fearing is suddenly revealed to have been nothing more than a servant. The real mastermind is the witch, completely changing how we view everything that's happened so far. Rather than concluding one story, the ending opens this door to an even larger problem. And here we hit the final episode, Hansel and Gretel, the longest in the series by far, over 10 minutes longer than the last episode. Now, it will be quite difficult to relate this back to the Brothers Grimm stories, as even Foxymations said it's completely changed from the original, but I will try all that I can. We start at Gretel's house with her seeing the spirit of her brother asking her to save him, with Gretel trying to figure out if she's hallucinating before finding a letter like other characters before her. Gretel follows the breadcrumbs, whereas in the original story Hansel uses breadcrumbs as a way to get home, but unfortunately birds eat the crumbs, making sure the two get lost in the woods and go searching. Gretel comes across the burned pig's house but ignores it, realising that's not where the breadcrumbs lead, so she continues. Another spoiler is that in one of the alternative endings, the wolf kills Gretel, leading to everyone is dead ending, but once again not canon, so she keeps walking as there is no wolf. He is dead, still rotting in hell. Another Hansel hallucination once again makes Gretel feel like she's going insane, till the breadcrumb trail ends, leading to the famous gingerbread house we are familiar with in the original story. Both characters in the original start eating the gingerbread house. Of course that doesn't happen here. A creepy woman answers the door, potentially the witch, and Gretel is let inside and sat down to talk to the woman. She explains while Gretel asks questions before explaining how the demon wolf came to be and what the child known as Owen we have been seeing was.
Listen carefully. A long time ago, there was a boy whom everyone loved to mock. They enjoyed laughing at him because he was weak and fragile and didn't know how to defend himself. But one day, their pranks went too far. They set fire to the poor boy's house. And then he went mad. After all those pranks, he was consumed by fury and a thirst for revenge, and he became corrupted. He began to kill not only those who mocked him, but even innocent people who had nothing to do with his story. He had become a cruel murderer, but he wanted to be something more. So, he went to a witch's house and knocked on the door. How can I help you?
I want to become a mortal, bloodthirsty and cruel creature that nothing can stop me.
Alright, you want to become a creature similar to what?
A wolf.
Okay, for that, I need you to bring me the body of a wolf for the spell to work. Alright, with the wolf's body in hand, I just need you to tell me, what is your greatest fear?
Fire. What I most fear is fire.
Very well, I will transform you into a creature resembling a wolf. You will be immortal, cruel, and bloodthirsty, and you will be unstoppable. But do not dare to approach fire, or you will die. As a form of payment, I want your soul in exchange. Do you accept?
Yes.
And so, the spell was cast on the murderer. A few days later, he had become a creature resembling a wolf. He was immortal, and nothing could stop him, not even bullets. He was sadistic, merciless, bloodthirsty, and cruel. Everyone feared that evil, but only one thing could stop him: fire. This wolf claimed many victims over the years, and your brother might have been one of them.
Gretel, confused and not believing the woman, tries to leave but can't because of the weather and due to the weather and circumstances of her brother leading her here, she stays the night but is unable to sleep. In the original story, the witch who owns the house does act nice to start in an attempt to gain the siblings' trust via manipulation. Gretel falls asleep by accident, dreaming of what happened to her brother, and a fake-out scare where the woman appears in her room before Gretel wakes up frustrated at herself for drifting off. While walking with a flashlight, she sees the wolf's corpse and takes the key he's holding, and I must say I love the Resident Evil style item examination. Just thought that was worth mentioning, whether it was intentional or not. Her goal is to sneak into the basement, but we know this all seems a bit too easy to be a coincidence. She comes across a book that tells you how to kill a witch, as mild foreshadowing. The woman, now confirmed as the witch, knocks out and ties up Gretel in a bid to finish off her evil plan. She admits she needs Gretel's soul, and that her creation, the wolf, was collecting souls. In a twist though, Hansel is revealed to be partly alive, which nobody saw coming. As her brother asks for help, the witch without emotion rips his head off, killing him, explaining why his soul hasn't rested yet. And going back to the past mentioned points about sound, Gretel's cries are horrifying to hear. But in a somewhat surprise, Gretel manages to break free and kill the witch, just as the book told her to, putting an end to her reign of terror. The witch, joined by Owen, is sent to hell to burn for eternity after showing her anger at Gretel. Gretel, in shock that it all happened, leaves the house, visiting a grave made for her brother, and we get the true ending, knowing Hansel is finally at peace. With Gretel finally defeating the witch, the series comes full circle. The wolf, who had spent the first half of the story feeling like an unstoppable force of nature, is revealed to have just been one piece of a much larger nightmare. By the end, every major question has been answered without sacrificing the mystery that made the series so engaging in the first place. It's a satisfying conclusion that rewards viewers who paid attention, while still leaving enough room for interpretation. Looking back, I think that's what makes Foxymations' fairytale analog horror stand out in such a divisive genre. Throughout this video, I've talked about how analog horror often struggles with overused tropes, confusing storytelling, and relying on aesthetics instead of substance. Foxymation certainly borrows familiar elements, VHS distortion and cryptic broadcasts, but it never lets those become the entire experience. Every stylistic choice exists to serve the story. The series treats the Brothers Grimm's fairy tales with an insane amount of respect. It doesn't simply make them darker for the sake of being edgy, instead it takes the themes that were always there and simply amplifies them. But in a fairytale analog horror, there is no perfect happy ending. These fairy tales have survived for centuries and generations for good reason. They're iconic and different, and while I don't find it the best by far, I do think the series is good and worth a watch. Thank you for making it through this longer than normal type video. I do appreciate it. If you enjoy these types of analysis, please do subscribe and feel free to watch more of them, as I am trying to upload more. And below in the description, I'm going to leave a link to every video clip that I have used, and also a link to where you can buy the Brothers Grimm stories, as I do believe you should check them out. And I do also want to hear your opinion on the stories and analog horror as a whole, to see what you think about it. Anyway, thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.